correspondent Nomia Iqbal, who is on Capitol Hill for us, watching those proceedings. Nomia, what did you make of the result?
Well, as you say, Jane, there's no real surprise, and this trial wasn't expected to have any kind of cliffhanger. I think every journalist working on the trial this morning woke up believing that Donald Trump would be acquitted, and he'd be acquitted very swiftly. But we had the drama of the story that broke overnight, which centered on a phone call that was made between Donald Trump and the Republican Senate Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, which suggested that Donald Trump had no problem with the riots as they were happening. And that's been one of the key arguments that the Democrats made, that not only did Donald Trump, they say, incite the mob on January the 6th, but he had no problem with the riots when they were happening. But that drama quickly ended this morning, with the trial moving very swiftly. And now, as we've seen, the vote has been concluded at 57-43. Few surprises. They got more Republicans than they probably thought they would. It's a bipartisan majority, but the conclusion is exactly what everyone expected. Donald Trump has been acquitted.
Why do you think, though, we saw more Republicans cross the aisle than expected? We knew there were probably going to be 4, maybe 5, but in the end, 7, including some very staunch pro-Trump loyalists like Richard Burr, the senator from North Carolina, has been a very vocal supporter of Donald Trump.
And he's due to retire as well. And I think that the Democrats, they would say they put on a very compelling case over the last few days, in which they used a video and audio footage that had never been seen before of just how close the mob came to even putting the lives of politicians at risk. Mitt Romney was, an interesting one in all of this. He's a Republican senator. He had voted that the trial was constitutional. He actually featured in one of those videos where he was seen walking towards the mob before being directed away by an officer who has just now recently been awarded a congressional medal. So I think a lot of that footage it was very emotional, and I think that really did appeal to some of these Republicans who did cross party lines to vote with the Democrats. But there were no surprises with a lot of them, such as Marco Rubio, which actually gave the Republican, which actually gave the majority, which meant that that Donald Trump was acquitted. It was actually his vote that decided that in the end. Also Rand Paul as well, and Mitch McConnell. In the end, they stuck with Donald Trump. Their line was always that this trial was unconstitutional. What was interesting, though, Jane, was that if they believed that this trial was unconstitutional, you would have thought that they would have just stuck with that line. But they didn't. They also said that Donald Trump had the right to express his freedom of speech. And interestingly, Jamie Raskin, as he was summing up, he said, well, Donald Trump has never been stopped from expressing his right to free speech. But I think that this does show that the Republican Party are embracing Mr. Trump. That even though he's no longer the president, this is a man who has huge political influence, not just over the party, but moving forward. This now means that Donald Trump could run for office again, if he chooses to, in 2024.
Does this set him up now as a continuing political figure?
I think it does, because Republicans have been criticised by the Democrats over the last 4 years for being slavish to Donald Trump. And many of their arguments have been, this fear that they have of Donald Trump, that he can, he goes on Twitter, and of course he's not on Twitter right now, and they're thinking about their political careers, their political ambitions. Some of them might want to run for the presidency themselves in the future. And I think what this shows is that the Republican Party feel that they cannot really move without Donald Trump. I think it's always worth remembering that Donald Trump changed the demographics of the base, or the Republican voting base. When I've travelled around America and I've spoken to a lot of supporters of the Republican Party, some of them have said that they always viewed the Republicans as the party of the rich and the Democrats the party of the people. That's changed for a lot of people. He won more than 75 million votes. And I think the Republican Party feel that this is a man that still has a place in their party. And I think that this vote was not a surprise. As I mentioned before, we didn't expect any cliffhangers today, and the Republicans have confirmed what everyone suspected, that they are continuing to embrace Mr. Trump.
What about the actual President, Biden? How might he react to this?
Well, it's interesting with President Biden because when he's been asked about the impeachment trial, he doesn't seem to really want to focus on it too much. And he did say earlier in the week that he hoped that some of his colleagues in the Senate might change their minds. But President Biden has a lot of work to do. He needs to pass this COVID relief bill. He also needs to confirm a lot of his people that he wants to bring into his cabinet. So whilst I imagine it might be a case of, well, we don't know what he's thinking, that he might have wanted to see a different result. I think it does mean for him, for the Democratic Party, that they can move forward now with doing business because he's only been in office for less than a month, and there's a lot of expectation that Biden, there is hope that he will deliver on a lot of the promises that he's made, particularly on COVID.
Nomia, as you say, there are no surprises with this trial at all. Given that, what do you think the Democrats actually achieved by pursuing this when many people around the country said it was an act of political vengeance, it was political theatre? What's the achievement here?
I think the Democrats will argue that they had to do this. If you think back to Jamie Raskin, the congressman who is the lead impeachment manager, he said if this isn't impeachable, what is? The charge that Donald Trump was facing was about as serious as you can get for a president. He was accused of inciting a mob to attack the Capitol, heart of American democracy, to overturn the electoral victory of Joe Biden, an election he won in a democratic process. And, overturning that victory would have disenfranchised millions of Americans. And they will argue that we had to do something about that. I think they also wanted to put the Republicans up against the wall and say to them, OK, what is your red line with this guy? And whilst they didn't get the result they wanted, what I think they've done is made a historical record of this moment in history.
Nomia Iqbal on Capitol Hill, thank you so much. And Jane, just to repeat to our viewers, Donald Trump has been acquitted of the single charge of incitement to insurrection, concluding the first ever impeachment trial of a former president.